Hello everybody and welcome back to Eastburn Models. On today's video I'm just going to go through just a quick video of how to set the air pressure for your airbrush. A lot of people get a bit confused with this, but I'm hoping this guide will just help you work through. Now you'll notice on the screen that you can see the airbrush here, but you can also see the regulator that I've got up on the top, the oil and the water separator. So this is just a live demonstration of the gauge when it's working, that's all. Now the compressor itself has got round about 60 PSI in it, but so it comes through the line and into the regulator. Now it's set at 0 at the moment, because if I pull the trigger itself, nothing's coming through. On these I do have air adjusters on the quick release, but I tend to just leave these open because I've got one there and then I've got another one on the top here. I just leave them fully open and do all the controlling through the regulator on the shelf here. So there's a difference between, if I just set this now to come through maximum, I'm going to get 60 PSI, so I need to drop it down to round about 22 PSI. Some paints take a little bit higher, some paints take a bit lower. Primers tend to move left and right a little bit higher and lower. So how we set the airbrush to work at the PSI we need it, regardless of what the compressor's pumping out, at 60 PSI, we can regulate that by the controlling system here. And what you do, a lot of mistakes people have, they wind it, if I can just keep my hands off everything, what they do, they take it to say 22 PSI. I'm just struggling to roughly see it at the moment because the camera's right in front of it. So let's say that's 22 PSI. So what they do then is they think that it's absolutely fine to spray now because the air coming through that is at 22 PSI. But that's not flowing air, that's startup air. So what I mean by that is if I pull the trigger now and keep the trigger on, you'll see this needle drop down and it'll show you the running pressure, the PSI you've got. So if I pull the trigger, so as you can tell it's just dropped a little bit there. So that's what you're after. Now when you set the airbrush for the flowing pressure you need, which it's got barely nothing in it now anyway, but the compressor will kick in and that, because I don't have a tank on my compressor, I just have a pumping system. I still get regulated air. So what I'm going to do now is how you set your regulator to pump the 22 out is you pull the trigger back so the air is coming out a little bit. It's because I just haven't turned it fully off, and then you wind this completely up, keep going until you get to 22, which I think that's about there anyway. I just can't see it because of the camera properly, but I roughly know where it is. So now we know that it's set at 22 now. Yeah, I can just see it. So when we're spraying now, we're going to be pumping 22 PSI out. And if you want it a bit lower, you push the trigger down, but then you wind it down to say there. Because sometimes you have to run things at say 16 PSI and 15 PSI. So I tend to run everything. You keep the trigger down and you wind it up. I tend to run everything at around about 22 PSI. I'm just struggling to see it because of camera. There, I think it's there. But it's round about there, so I know all the air now is regulated, so the compressor's keeping up with it, and it's flowing out at a regulated 22 PSI. And then if I let go, it'll build back up again. It will move up again because of the pressure in the compressor. But as soon as I pull the trigger again, it'll drop back down to roughly where I set it. So we know we're getting a constant air at 22 psi now. So just doing that on my arm there, I can feel it. It's a nice flow. Now the other thing you've got to remember when you're spraying something is because it builds it up a little bit higher because of the pressure in the line. When you're spraying say we'll just grab a spoon here. When you're spraying your spoon, you don't want to start it on the model or on the plastic spoon. You want to be starting it off because the pressure you're getting through that nozzle to start with is the pressure on the gauge. So what you tend to do is move it off a little bit, just a little squirt, 'cause it only takes a little push of the air, then start your spraying. So we'll go on and go off, but we're constantly at that 22 psi all the time. And that is just a quick video to show how I set the airbrushing system up. So just to recap that, if I just let all the air back out of the gauge, which you'd be able to see in the top right, and then I pull the trigger, there's no air coming through that at all now, nothing. So again, you push the trigger down so you've got the air, not the fluid, the air. I tend to set this up without any product in the actual pot itself. I don't mess around with putting paint in. So I push the air button down and then I wind it up to the desired pressure and need, whether that's 22 or 16 or anything you need. So now I know I've got it set at roughly about 22 psi. Then I can just let my finger off and it will creep back up. And then when I push my finger again, it'll go back down to what I set it at. And then off again, it'll go back up. And that is the quickest way to set your airbrushing up for the PSI that you require. Because each paint will have a specific PSI that it prefers to be sprayed through. Again, it goes on the quality of the gun as well for atomization. So some paints on the cheaper guns, you might have to push it up to say 24, 25, 26 psi just to get that same flow you'd get on a good brush, where if you spent a couple of hundred, £200 or £300 on an airbrush, which I clearly don't have, then you could run them at a lower pressure because it atomizes the paint a lot better. So that's the video on this one, how to set the actual airbrush. But like I said, don't bother with these valves, these check valves, don't bother with these. I never do. And then I don't bother with the airbrush one either. I don't do that. These are micro adjustments of these. So just for this video, I'm not going to go through the micro adjustments on them. So I hope this video helps, and as you can see, it's still at that pressure now, and we'll come back with another one when I do set the airbrush up internally and set the micro adjustments, just what you need, just to tweak it a little bit. But you can micro adjust these all you want, but if the regulator's set at that, what you tend to do is move that hook up a lot more and then might drop it down with these, so you've got a little bit more pressure in the line, in the gun, than you actually need. But I tend not to mess with all this because sometimes the seals can drip out a little bit of air, and I tend not to do that. I want to regulate it all by the regulator. That's why it's up at the spray booth. But apart from that, thanks for watching.